congratulations. So thank you for joining me. I am impressed at the amount of people that a conference about team leading is attracting in those days where paper events are not entirely a thing. But yeah, well, thanks a lot for joining. This is the first time I'm going to talk about this topic. So this topic is contains some theory about about Agile, and I have chosen to apply this theory to Magic tournament team leading. So before moving on, some as usual some rules for this seminar and some credits. I've been really working on making my seminars incredibly participative recently, and this one, because the subject is like very dense, will be a bit more of a lecture than usually. However, anytime you've got input, a question or a remark or something like that, feel free to type it in Traxi text, and it's like right in front of me, and I am monitoring it at all times. Usually, when I stop in the middle of a sentence, I'm thinking that's because I froze, because I am actually reading at the same time, and my brain struggles doing two things at a time, which I heard is a key characteristic of males. We are many, and as it was pointed out, I'm used to present on Discord that is limited to 50 participants, which means that please try to be aware of what others posted, and if what you were about to post is the exact same thing as someone else did, please support the answer with an emoji. That keeps the channel clear, and that avoids me having potentially 25 lines to read, which will de facto put a pause, because I cannot. If I need to stop to comment on your remarks, I cannot go on with the presentation. Just like most of my seminars, I'm going to talk about my life. I like to talk about my life, and hopefully it's both entertaining and interesting. At least that's how I perceive it. And that's the best I can say. And finally, if you've got a question, don't believe that it's a dumb question. The only dumb questions are the ones that you do not ask. And even when or if you have a remark and we would end up like disagreeing on that remark, that is totally fine, because the worst case scenario is that we're each going to grow and discuss and make others grow as a result. And honestly, when the worst that can happen is that we each grow, that's totally cool, I think. And about the credits, most of the theories that I'm going to talk about are coming from a book written by Jürgen Appelo, a Dutch consultant in agile management, in his book from 2010, Management 3.0. So first, let's go with some definitions. What does agile mean? So the origins are the Agile Manifesto, which you can find on agilemanifesto.org, and which I've put just over here. We are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others to do it. Through this work, we have come to value. Before moving further, I need to mention that Agile was originally created in the software development area of things. This was originally very specific. However, it turned out that to make Agile work, it needed a management that was adjusted to Agile, and that's how it stemmed. And we ended up in the Agile on that topic of Agile management. So through this work, we have come to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. That is, while there is value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. So that last sentence is crucial, because what this says is not processes are bad, we don't need tools, documentation is useless. That's not what this is about. It's about a change in focus. And this is what I'm going to focus on explaining this. So Agile has been designed to handle complex systems. So what is a complex system? It's a constantly evolving system. In the scale of IT development, at some point you're trying to develop a website for a company, and the company starts realizing that their needs are maybe slightly different than what they initially said. So there used to be a time where basically it would be like, yep, but this is what we signed for, so this is what we're going to develop. You don't need this. Too bad. You should have told us right away what this was, which was just not working. However, it was definitely following the plan, and it was definitely within the boundaries of the contract negotiation. However, this was such of a loss-loss exchange. And so basically, a complex system is a system that you cannot always predict. And what is a magic tournament except something that you cannot always predict? Think about it. You cannot even always predict that Walter is going to crash, which is telling about how complex it is. Most of the time, like, you need to anticipate that it will, but that's but that might be a different topic. So yeah, so complex is constantly evolving like a magic event. And out of the four lines that you can read in the manifesto, at least 50% of the core values of the manifesto are directly transferable to management. When I say at least 50%, the two that I am completely certain of is in valuing individuals and interaction over processes and tools, and responding to change over following a plan. Because at some point the event needs to happen, and because we've got sudden situations that could endanger the event, we cannot always follow the plan. At some point we need to adjust. And when it comes to working software over comprehensive documentation, that may or may not apply. Like, we should each have processes so that we can be organized. Otherwise, this is just massive chaos. And a complex system is not a massive chaos, it's control chaos. But within that complex system, at some point, we need to be able to make something work. So a bit of history of management. This is obviously slightly caricatural for the sake of this being mostly an introduction and as broad as I figured I could do, so that if you've never heard of it, you can grab it. So in the 1970s, it was pretty much CEO decides. So the CEO runs a plan on paper, and at some point makes photocopies that he gives to the vice president, and the vice president make more photocopies, etc., to the down of the pyramid. This was incredibly top-down management, and there was an expectation that everybody had to follow the plan, which resulted in some low engagement from the base of the pyramid, actually incredibly close to chain work, which is, well, this is what you need to do. You have no say, and just do it because that's what you pay. That's what we pay you for. A pair of arms is a pair of arms. You might have something interesting to say, but we don't care because you're not the CEO, pretty much. In the 1990s, some adjustments were given to this because the market started to evolve more rapidly. And at some point, some adaptability became needed, like the notion of having a plan coming from the CEO and that had to be performed no matter what. It was close to USS. That's a story I forgot. In the 1970s, like the way most companies were run was actually pretty close to 1950s USSR, where you had some things like, okay, so Central Committee in Moscow decided that USSR needed to produce 5 million trucks. So some factories needed to do the structure, some factories needed to do the engine, some factories needed to do the tires. Turns out that at some point, the factories that should have done the tires only did 5 million of them because they didn't multiply by 4 or 6. Because what they received was a quantity, and that's what they did because who were they to discuss the plan? Which clearly showed that it doesn't work when you do not allow the basis to actually, when you do not create favorable grounds for the basis to actually give feedback. And so in the 1990s, with the market evolving, the top started to define more like global goals so that the basis could choose how to attain them. However, the goals were still set in stone, and there was the basis acting as a sounding board to say, hey, did you consider this? Was still not really welcome. So it was still massively top down. And now we are moving to agile management, where the theory is that the basis can and is actually encouraged to give input. Why? Because when you're developing a software, if for the team of developers to talk to the customer, they need to talk to the commercial, who's going to talk to the commercial of the company, who's going to talk to whoever has some technical expertise inside the client company. That doesn't work because everything goes through a bunch of steps which are very codified. But at some point, some people just don't have a clue what they're talking about. And obviously that leads to major miscommunication. So there is a need that the basis gives feedback, and ideally that the basis can give feedback directly to the client. So the 70s shows applied to magic. Now we're going to apply to magic. That's pretty much micromanagement. So what are the strengths of micromanagement? And at this point, please use the text channel to type what you believe are the positives of micromanagement. And once again, if what you would like to say has been said already, please support with an emoji. That would be awesome so that I can parse the comments better. Direct transfer of specific skills. Well, that is arguable because if I give you a direct instructions, am I transferring those skills? If I do not explain anything, do I transfer anything? Like you know what to do, but you do not know why to do it. The leaders can feel like they are in full control. That is correct. Yep. Sense of control over information. maybe not over information, but at least sense of control. Yes. In the world of crafts, yes, indeed. Like you could learn by repeating the gestures. Yes, that is reasonable. Yep. But however, in the John, in the sentence that you quote, there is a huge difference between you need to cut this shape this specific way, period, and you need to cut this shape this specific way and hold your hands like this. Because the second one is already not a lot of micromanagement, because there is some education, which means that we are going to make you autonomous eventually. Removing room for interpretation, that's reasonable. Lower layers can be less skilled. That's even arguable. Micromanagers can better empathize with the employers. That would need some explanation because I'm not sure I get this one, but that feels interesting. Troubleshooting at an early stage to prevent escalating problems. Yes, in a world where the manager is omniscient and 100% capable, that is correct. Having control of the exact process method of implementation. Yep, that is reasonable. So what I define here, well, there's a strong feeling of control, which enhances confidence. There's a feeling of safety as well. If people are doing exactly what I want them to do, then nothing can go wrong. So there's also, I think, quite a lot of maybe of pride here. Like it's a feeling of it's a you want to back up yourself pretty much, and that's also technically the insurance of a well followed plan. Now, what are the drawbacks or weaknesses of micromanagement? And as John accurately points out, the feeling of control and safety is very different from control and safety, and we might touch that later, but that's a very good point. A single point of failure if your manager is removed, the event crashes. Yes, that is correct. Lower layers alienation. That is correct. Poor scalability. Yep, correct. Inefficiency. That's well, it cannot be that generic. I mean, like you would need to give some. You would need to give some. I think you cannot generalize this. Sometimes that works. Poor worker satisfaction generally, yes. Limited room for creativity, definitely. Frustration, definitely. Manager has too much information to process, exhaustion. Yep, that is correct. So what I thought about was that micromanagement denies the team any global vision, which can lead to frustration and no anticipation, which was definitely mentioned. It's also time consuming because when you micromanage, generally you do not talk to the team at once. You are going to each judge individually to tell them exactly what they will need to do next time. So basically, you will spend a lot of time like walking the floor, going to every person to tell them, hey, this is what you need to do in the next 5 minutes, and blah. By not giving them a global goal, you need to go tell them at every point what they need to do. Otherwise, they're like, I have nothing to do. Obviously, they could step up, but you're not incentivizing this. And that's where I'm coming in. Eventually, it incentivizes people to not think because thinking becomes detrimental. Because you give them precise tasks with little latitude. And even worse, if at some point someone takes some latitude, they might get challenged as to why they took an initiative, which eventually leads into people saying, hey, I knew this sucked, but I did exactly what I was asked. It crashed. Yep, I know. I don't care because it's not my job, which is detrimental to everybody. But to plenty of extent, it's almost the only logical reaction from the employee if at some point they get challenged because they were cleverer than the system. Uh, Best case scenario of micromanagement, feedback may be welcome, but generally the micromanager is not going to change anything on spot. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you always need to change something on spot, but at least if you always dismiss it, that doesn't really work. So as a conclusion, micromanagement is basically trading flexibility for security. And when I wrote this, I did not think about the potential politics in that statement, but I did not intend it. Basically, it's positive for the TL because they have a sense of safety, they have a sense of being in control, like they feel good, but it's highly demotivating for and I should be back. If anyone can confirm that on the chat, that'd be awesome. Awesome, thank you. So yes, so this is highly demotivating for the team because I really dislike trying to help and someone's like, hey, you shouldn't have done that. Yep, sorry, I was trying to help. I thought this was within my scope. Can you clarify my scope? Um, it does not need to go to uh, uh, incredibly specific macro-management, but at least this needs to be kept in mind. So moving on to the 90s, it's a step of delegation. So first, a small story that John Shannon, a former level 4, told me. During the Vietnam War, in the US Army, there was a radical change in troops organization. Battalions were given final objectives, like on a map. They had some GPS coordinates, and they knew where they should go. But however, they were 100% free of choosing which specific road or path to go there. And why? Because after some point, losing entire battalions in the jungle because they were told to take that path, and the Viet Cong was at some point identified that this was a preferred path and was ambushing soldiers. They realized that it was pointless to for the commanders to tell people, hey, this is exactly where you need to go to die. That was not incredibly working. And from the moment that the U.S. Army, still from source from is John Shannon, from the moment the U.S. Army made that radical change in organization, the losses in lives collapsed. The US Army started losing a lot fewer soldiers. So definitely, this tends to show that even in what we could call a traditionally incredibly ordered entity, the army, uh, giving some leeway to the operatives made some sense. And this was as early as late 1960s, early 1970s. Interestingly, that's still not the case in every company. So taking that story and applying it to Magic, you can see that it's the same. Like team leaders delegate to teammates. In the end of round, generally, the team leader gives one zone to each of the zone leaders, and they're responsible for that zone. And if there's an issue in the zone, well, they fix it. Such as at this point, I've got 15 active tables and only 5 judges, but that other zone is finished. I might ask for reinforcement, things like that. At this point, the zone leader should be allowed to do that on their own versus going back to the stage, talking to the team lead to say, hey, I've got that issue. And while I came here, there's nobody left in the zone to coordinate anything, etc. In logistics, to distribute product, that was kind of the same. And in deck checks, well, the team leader is not performing every deck check themselves. And actually, when you perform a deck check, it's not exactly chain work. Like you need to use your brain to evaluate if that card marked. Like, did I detect that a card is potentially marked, etc., etc. In the same way, as a deck check lead, I'm always, are you available? Go take whichever table on the floor to do a mid round. The first one you find, you take it. So overall, team leaders don't run things themselves, or they fail the day 2 team lead exam. Because guess what? Most of the reasons why new team leaders who are judging a GP day 2, the main reason that they fail is because they don't manage to delegate anything. Yes, chain work is assembly line. Yes, this was a literal translation from French, which is travail à la chaîne. I will fix this. I'm gonna make a note. Thanks. Yep. So so delegation, it's a way to challenge and engage the team. And as a manager, and this is the first time I'm bringing the word manager here, as a team leader, you should manage your team. Management and leadership are two different things, and the fact that that generally we call people responsible for teams team leaders implies leadership, which is different topic. But at least they're team managers, and the manager should only intervene to support when the manager sees that somebody is struggling and that they might need support and guidance. The manager should not do. They might do as well as others, but not primarily do instead of others. And trust me, it's not just a view of the mind. I have seen that so many times. So many times I have said, can I take a break because I have nothing to do and I'll go take a coffee? And this was me going to the team lead to try to get them to understand they were doing everything and I had nothing to do. And they were like, oh yeah, sure. Well, okay. I mean, I'll take it and I'll give the feedback at the end because I'm not going to challenge them at that point because that would not necessarily work, not the correct moment to engage. And the manager should also check in with the team through meetings with the entire team, but also checking individually, because when you check in individually to check how things are going, you also allow someone who does not feel super comfortable speaking outside of a one-on-one to expand. A private discussion where you allow someone to speak is very like achieves marvels. So can I have a break because I have nothing to do should be such a red flag for a manager? Yes, and it is when I'm talking about it. But you need to generally consider that the first time someone is doing it, they have no experience. And the only thing they have experience for is completing the tasks. Therefore, they will try to find some safety in completing the tasks. And this is where it becomes clear that they have not stepped up to being able to lead a team. They're great team members, but not team managers. And so now we can go to the 2010s with agile management. So this slide will be about what agile management is in the IT industry. The manager should energize people, make them engaged, make them happy to be there. The manager should empower the teams. The manager should allow the teams to suggest and implement things that they like, basically to self-organize. The management should align constraints. What does that mean? That means that the manager should analyze the environment, take the best out and analyze it properly so that it removes some pressure from the team, but also explain what the constraints are so that the team can adapt. The manager should develop competence. That's what we've seen just before, just a little bit with delegation, or with John's example of crafting. Developing competence is to do that, you need to put your hands like this. In the crafting, on the crafting topic. In Magic, that would be, have you ever used the industrial cut machine? No? Then I'll show you, because if it's like, or you're not even able to cut slips, well, that I've never used that machine. Were there tutorials that I missed? No? Oh, you expected me to already master something I had never seen before? Yep. Congrats if you managed. I did not. So as a manager, it's crucially important to develop competence, and that will lead to energizing people. Communication and cooperation. It's crucially important still to communicate with the team and to cooperate with the team. In a word, so that you work with people, not that people work for you. When people have the feeling that they are working for you, you have put, this is definitely not agile, and you have started to put some distance that will become rough to catch up. And finally, all of this should hopefully lead to improving everything. The notion of self-organization of the team will, people will naturally self-organize, especially in complex systems, and they will identify their own best practices, and they will improve. And it's also possible that they're going to improve the processes. And here I'm coming back to the processes because, as we've seen in the manifesto, while people are more important than processes, processes still matter. And to me, having processes, it's a solid basis. It's when I do not know what else to do, I know what I should be doing, which is follow the process. When I feel comfortable and I have identified that the process is struggling, then I can deviate. I did not use deviate randomly. It's the exact same thing as the IPG, which is another of my pet topics. So now moving on to agile management applied to Magic. So rule number one, make a plan. This is crafting processes. and be ready to amend that plan based on feedback. If you make a plan and you refuse to change the plan, this is called 1970s. And as we've seen, that does not work. Number two, innovate to motivate. If your team is coming and basically it's like, well, it's gonna be yet another day, just like all the other one, because this is my GP number 100, and I'm sure that for you it's GP number 2, but for me it's the same, and I don't care. You're not motivating at all. You're actually just telling that person who is brand new, it's gonna suck. Thanks for coming. I appreciate that you took some vacation, but it's gonna suck. That cannot work. And when I say this, I am not even caricaturing too much. Obviously, I'm a little bit caricatural, but not even, but not crazy caricatural. Number three, understand your teammates. Not everybody has the same goals. Not everybody wants to do things, wants to achieve the same at the end of the day. And if you're managing them well, you should put them in charge of things that will motivate them so that they feel that they can improve. What would be the point of, for instance, assigning, someone tells you, hey, I really would like to improve on detecting slow play. And you're like, yes, you're going to do deck checks. Failure, like definitely failure. Like you need to listen to people and you need to facilitate them. And all of this pretty much sums it up to be benevolent. We're all here to make an event work, and we're all here to have a great day. So what is the point of not trying to make everybody's days great? I mean, just in fairness, do you like when someone is not benevolent with you? I'm pretty sure that most of you don't like that. So when you interact with someone, think about it and ask yourself, what can I do to make that person's life better today? So make a plan and amend it. So plans are mandatory. Why? Because without a plan, this is called chaos. And as we've seen before, in a complex system, we are not in chaos because a complex system is controlled chaos, which means that a complex system needs to remain flexible, yet under control. And without a plan, teammates, no matter their level of experience, get lost. I could tell you about those numerous briefings which started by, oh my God, you all are so experienced that nothing can go wrong. See you in 25 minutes. Let's get a coffee. And I can tell you that at none of those events, we started on time. And I can tell you that at one of those events, it was discovered we did not have enough limited stamped product exactly 3 minutes before the tournament should have started. Because at this point, nobody was responsible of anything. We were all awesome. So thanks. My ego loved it. I can tell you that my ego did not love it so much 3 minutes before 9. Second thing, define some global goals. Because when you define global goals for the team need to work together to achieve those goals. Having goals to achieve is very motivating. Ideally, you should make those goals quantifiable so the team can assess their own performance. For deck checks, it would be a targeted number on the day. For end of round, targeted time to have everything covered. Uh, for slips, target time to have everything distributed, etc. I just noted that there are many comments, so I will just take a quick time to read them. So Lou indicates it's nice at least to know why one cannot work on the position they asked or cannot do things in a particular way. Yes, that is crucial. If at some point someone tells you what they would like to do and you cannot give them the position, you should explain it. I mean, sometimes it doesn't work, but you should explain it and ideally proactively so that they feel considered. And about John's sentence about if you're not feeling well, be clear about it. We're going to talk a bit about that later, but that is a very, very good point. So going back to global goals, try to be defining global goals engaging. It makes teammates feel that they are part of something greater and that they are more than the sum of the individuals. That it's by working with each other that they have a chance to succeed, and that they will succeed as a team. Um, to engage people, you can offer some innovation to improve the system, or even like crafting an entirely new system. This is something that I've seen Matteo Caligari, for instance, doing at Pro Tour, where he basically rethought entirely the how we would do deck checks, and that worked super well. I mean, it was a concept where rather than assigning people in pairs and telling those pairs you need to do one deck check, then one mid round, he assigned someone to grab decks, and that's the only things that person was doing. And the other ones, decks were coming, they were deck checking them, etc. And this was very engaging for the team. Like I had multiple people in the team coming to me saying, "Wow, that's a very long time. I had not spent such a good day at deck checks." So definitely, and this is where innovation allows like increases motivation. Be mindful. No plan is perfect, so you need to be ready to amend your plan. You need to care for the suggestions that you are given. Generally speaking, unless you believe that the idea is not gonna work most of the time because you have already tried it and failed, you should say, "Yep, let's try it," because it's very engaging for the other person, and most likely it's not going to break anything. Because if it could, you would probably have noticed that it would make everything collapse. Otherwise, it's just good. It's just a new experience. And once again, the worst thing is you're going to have a discussion with someone, and that will end up in mentoring. So next one, innovate to motivate. So new is challenging. So people feel very motivated when they feel that they can contribute to improving system. This is very rewarding. And when I talk about rewarding, it's not like more money or any tangible perk. It's just about how they feel about themselves. I was part of something greater. As someone who started judging where honestly I was pretty much losing money every time I was going to GPs. This was back to 2004, 2005. The reason I kept on going is that I felt I was learning a lot, and I felt I was achieving something greater. So that was incredibly motivating. The more we became professionals, the more I was like, do I believe I'm paid for this? No. Or yes. So feeling that you're part of something greater is really important. And so when you're managing people, you should make them feel they're part of something greater and not fake it like they should be. And also, yeah, I mean, when you go to someone, you have a suggestion, and you see that this contribution has been implemented. This also feels great. You can say, well, I'm proud of this. Back to 10 years ago when I started speaking that about cheating, because there was a time where you could actually be cheating even if you did not know you broke a rule, which was nonsense. And for me, this was really this was really horrible to handle as a judge. I was sometimes telling people, you cheated, and the guy's like, I didn't even know this was forbidden. And I was like, yep, but you're cheating. And when the rules changed, I felt it felt really rewarding. And yeah, I mean, obviously, sick brag, but I'm still proud of that. Implement feedback that you're given. Like I said, implement every suggestion that does not seem uh, unreasonable. And when someone comes to with a suggestion, ask them if they want to be in charge. Several reasons for that. Obviously, it's rewarding for the suggestion, for the person who did the suggestion, so it's motivating. But also, if they have that suggestion, it means that they thought about it. So if you put them in charge, there will likely be something that they did not fully explain to you, but that they will set up naturally because they thought about it. So this is just a win-win exchange. You're going to empower someone, and I come back to the concept of empowerment, and that could potentially lead to improving the system. A good example of that would be Isaac King, so our organizer of this weekend, who back to Oklahoma City when I was trying to apply the system for deck checks that Matteo created, that I talked about earlier. I know that sentence was incredibly poor. I apologize. I hope you understood. But at some point, Isaac came to me and said, "Hey, we're currently struggling, and I think that this is because X." And I told him, "Can you fix it?" And he's like, "Yes." And that's what he did. And he did great. He did just great. Um, Another thing is, the more you say yes, the more you will be respected when you need to say no. Generally speaking, when you say no, you need to have a good reason to say no. You need to be able to explain it. If you have no good reason to say no, what is the point of saying no? This is just dismissing the other one, so it's not motivating. And sometimes you just don't feel confident, but you're not entirely able to explain why. And that's okay at times, only at times. Like, you cannot do that every time, but you must follow up on it. Small story about San Diego, somewhere like 10 years ago. I put someone in charge. I was the over team leader of deck checks. So I was just below the head judge and over 3 team leaders of deck checks. This was a fairly specific structure. And I put someone in charge of organizing a deck list collection. So I had an idea in my mind, which I explained, and that person comes back and say, okay, I think I've got a better idea. And that person explains to me the idea. And for some reason, I didn't feel that the explanation was clear enough that I felt very comfortable that the person who had the idea had a full picture of the consequences in mind. And I said, "Hey, I'm not sure that I see what you mean, and I'm sorry. I'm going to veto this one. Let's stick to the plan." And and we can discuss later. It turned out that I forgot later on to go back to that judge until several hours afterwards, where someone came to me and said, "Did you notice that that judge is like super upset?" And I'm like, "Well, uh, now I notice. Now that you mention, and obviously, like from that judge perspective, I shut them down. I didn't even for no reason except I don't trust you, uh, which was not unfair to put it that way. And then I didn't follow up. Yep, greatly motivating, Kevin Desprez. Congrats. Afterwards, we chatted, and I explained some things, and we managed to settle the topic. But really, when you need to say no, have a good reason, and uh, and and debrief it. And sometimes you will be in a rush and you will not have time to explain now. And some things that can work is to say, okay, look, I know what you suggest is not going to work. I have good reasons for that, but I cannot explain them now. Please trust me, and I'll come back to you and do it. Otherwise, that's not going to work. And so finally, innovating is rewarding. Innovations are rarely slam dunks. When you innovate, it usually takes forever because the first time, and that's why like video games release some alpha versions, some beta versions before the final product. Like every time you create something, there are some bugs. But when you manage to correct those bugs, it's rewarding. So when you innovate, you should expect some struggle, and that is normal. And you should especially expect struggles from the person that you ask to implement your innovation because they didn't spend hours or days to think about it. But however, if you manage to go through, this feels even better. I'm reading those two comments. Uh, Maverick tells us that investing time in relationships and being reliable this way means others will trust that the time will be there in the future. It's one of those classic, your reputation will protect you when you forget, don't have time, but you have to build the reputation and live up to it. Yes, that is correct. And even when you forget, properly apologizing does a lot because it means that you do not take anything for granted and that you respect other people. If someone could look up at the schedule and tell me the amount of time I have left, that would be awesome because I'm talking a lot and I am a little bit lost on that. Thanks much. Next slide. 23. Okay, awesome. Thank you. So, handling innovation struggles. Because as much as I advocate to innovate, yes, at some point, some innovations are going to fail. I call that struggle, but really sometimes that's like failure. And that happens. So, some suggestions are not going to work. And you need to treat that for yourself, but also with the team, not as a failure, but as an investment. Now you know it doesn't work. We learn from the mistakes we make, and that's how the school system is designed. You learn the theory, you get some exercises. In the early exercises, some of your answers are going to be wrong. You're going to get explained, and at some point there will be an exam that is verifying that all of this process was fine, and now is that you have understood. And it should work the same in the professional environment. We make mistakes, we learn from it, and the highest quality is not to not make mistakes, because people who don't make mistakes, usually they don't do much. But however, if you've got toxic management around, you have a system of management that incentivizes people to not do anything so that they don't make mistakes. Because if they were to do a mistake, they would be challenged slash criticized slash maybe not hired again. So where does that lead us to? Yep, I'm just going to do nothing. Judge call over there. Let's pretend I need to go in the other direction, etc. And that is incredibly wrong. Mistakes are okay when remaining under control. And as a manager, you need to own the mistakes of the people in your team. You need to fix them, and you need to own them, and you need to educate them. This is what managing is about. So let's say that someone came with a suggestion and the system started struggling as a result. First, you can identify where it's struggling so you can try to improve it slash fix it. And if that doesn't work, you can revert to the original plan. And this is really why having a default plan is incredibly important. Because when you see that what you're trying to do does not work, you're like, okay, friends, now we're going to forget about all of this. We're coming back to the plan, and that will give us a strong downtime so that we can all catch up, and we're going to analyze and we're going to discuss the reasons why this didn't work later. But right now, let's have a break. Let's go back to charted territories. Why is it important to revert to the plan? Also because that plan was crafted while you were level-headed, like in your place, not in a hurry, not in the heat of the event. Therefore, that plan is solid and reliable, a real backup plan. That story from Philadelphia 2012, I was in charge of managing the judges at side events. And it turned out that I was the first one who actually worked on a schedule to distribute to judges forever, apparently. And what I said was, okay, so this is your basic assignment for the day in terms of events. I am not telling you you will always work at that event all day long, but if at some point you do not know what you should do, you go back to that event. That's it. So if at some point you feel lost, that can happen. Take a look at where you should go, because now you're not lost and you will be able to go back to a territory where you can feel comfortable because you know that you're at the correct place. Nobody can challenge you that you are on the event that is written on the paper. And at the same time, your teammates, if you sent a briefing email, they prepared for that plan, which means that, once again, you are reverting to a safe place, as I mentioned twice. In times of crisis, innovation is a coin flip that you may or may not want to take. So at GP Strasbourg in 2014, which I was the TO of, at some point we had issues because we had too many players trying to register at side events. And in the middle of that rush that we're trying to handle, one of my business partners come and start to explain to me a brand new system to change everything, which I did not feel comfortable with because I felt it was too much of a coin flip. I was not sure that I could just tell everybody, okay, friends, we're going to change everything while we're taking the heat. And I'm not even sure I can properly explain what we should be doing. So, especially when there's a huge crisis, reverting to the plan is putting people under a lot less pressure, and it's allowing people to catch up. So really, I'm going to insist a little bit more. Having a plan is great as long as you know when to quit, when to change it. Next step is understand your teammates. Every human is different. We all have qualities and we all have weaknesses. And it is critical to rely on people's qualities. Why? Because if you tell someone, oh, you're weak at this, so you're going to work exclusively on that today so that you can improve, this is just bullying people, pretty much. Because you know that someone is not great at that and they don't feel comfortable in it, and you specifically assign them to that. Which means that they will perform suboptimally, they will feel bad about it, and overall, your team is working less. On the other hand, when you, if you assign them where they have strong qualities, there is a chance that they will take some time to educate others because they are in an area of comfort that they feel great talking about. Diversity is a strength as well. Having incredibly homogeneous teams actually does not work. You want to have some diversity in your team so that at least someone is able to handle an issue. The very classic kind of diversity that you can find at a Grand Prix is language diversity within a team. Because we divide the floor into zones, and therefore you do not want to have your 6 French or Italian or 6 speakers or French or Italian or Spanish speakers in the same area, because if you need translation elsewhere, that's not going to work. And clearly, this is like speaking a second language is definitely a quality, it's a strength, and it's better to spread that through your staff. So I already talked about it, but like relying people on their strength, assign people at position where they feel comfortable, because comfort enhances performance and also enhances education. Assigning people to areas where they are weak so they improve is poor. Like I said, it's honestly close to bullying, in philosophically speaking. Because once you put them in that position, you can invite them to actually go outside of their comfort zone just a little bit, because they are in a comfortable environment. It's like, okay, would you like to take care of that? I know you don't really like it, but today seems to be doing great, so you might want to check. And if they say no, that's totally cool. Because as a manager, you're trying to help them improve. You cannot force them to improve. That does not work. And a perfect example of that is do not assign people, but ask for volunteers. I've been team leading floor features quite some in the past year, in the past 18 months, let's put it like that, in the last year of judging. And I had people assigned to the team that really did not want to go to the feature match area. They did not feel comfortable. And that's perfectly fine. So if you arrive and you make something which is, okay, so round 1 is going to be you, round 2 is going to be you, round 3 is going to be you. And at some point, someone who really does not feel comfortable to go is told to go. They are not going to have a good day. So what I did was to say, hey, so who wants to go to floor features? Usually there was nobody. So I was going and I'm like, okay, whoever wants to go, you come with me end of the round and I show you everything and you do it the next round. And in the next round, if someone comes to you, you do exactly what I did. You explain to them so that they feel that they are backed up. I am improving education, and it's all about win-win. And don't get me wrong, if I could spend my entire day over there, I would not mind. But it's not my role as a manager to just take that over. My role is to empower people and enhance their skills. Um, as a manager, you need to adjust to your teammates. You should not make them adjust to you, because once you start doing that, you're just that CEO from the 1970s or Joseph Stalin. Probably you didn't kill 20 million people, but still. Next step is, yeah, probably. I mean, I have no clues over there, so I do not want to commit to anything here. Be benevolent. So you need to assume that everybody is here to make things work. Because honestly, if you arrive and you believe that a pair of arms is a pair of arms, that people are interchangeable, and that people are slackers and incompetent, even when you try to talk about that privately to someone who's your peer, like someone is going to overhear, and that's incredibly demotivating. And even worse, when you are when you are not benevolent, people feel it. People feel treated with contempt. So that doesn't work. So you need to actively convince yourself, even if you have doubts, that everybody's here to make things work. It can happen that someone is undermining the team effort. And you need to investigate why. Because if you're like, if your primary response is, oh, that guy sucks, I don't want to interact with him, that does not work, because you're not going to improve anything. And guess what? There might be good reasons that this person is struggling. Like, who knows what's happening in their lives? Maybe they had a critical text message that you have nothing that you are not even entitled to know about. But at least by showing that you care and that you notice that they're struggling, and by checking how you can help, you should be able to help them. I'm reading the comments. Best teaching moment I've ever seen was when my team lead at an MF was put on end of round team lead to cover a break. First interaction was, oh, you're the new team lead, what should I do? Well, first thing is, tell me how to do this. I've never had this role before, so what should you do? Well, yeah, definitely. Apparently, there might have been a plan, but it was not communicated. And so actually, maybe I should add that to my first slide. Make a plan, communicate it, and amend it afterwards. And when Thiago Motai says that it's a pretty scary interaction, even though it's a wrong chat, actually, that looks scary, and I can agree with that. But that is not that is not so rare, to be fair. Especially when we had the generic breaks team. This was happening quite some, and this was usually where round 3 and 4 at GPs were struggling a lot more, because the person replacing the end of round lead was infinitely struggling. If you don't know how to handle that person who's undermining the team effort for whichever reason, consult with others. Usually you can escalate to the head judge saying, hey, this is happening, I don't know how to handle, can you help? Or something like that. But if you ignore or stick to venting, that is going to make the problem worse. Now I'm going to talk about a little story when I was leading the player investigations committee, which was like 10 years ago. I felt that the team was doing great. I had a team of 10, and out of those 10, let's say that five were very, very active. Five were like mostly inactive, but from a results point of view, as someone who thought that he was a good manager, I was like, well, my goals are achieved, so that's totally fine. And then someone reached out to me privately and was like, hey, just wanted to let you know that it's fairly frustrating that it's always the same five making the effort every month, because honestly sometimes I don't have time and I cancel something else to be able to do this, and at least three are never replying ever. And honestly, I'm not even sure why they're here, but I wish that there were more people. And yeah, basically, I had noticed that this was happening, but I ignored it because the results were there. So I could notice that this was undermining the team effort. I chose to ignore, and at some point, the problem became worse. And I had to basically emergency intervene. So not like snapping fingers, but very fast. And guess what? When I ended up kicking some of them from the team because they didn't even reply to my emails asking if they needed help to re-engage, I got shouted at because they were kicked without notice. Obviously, I should have done better before, even if ultimately I was not the one who was the issue, but I should have done better. Generally speaking, people behave the way you treat them. Um, uh, it's impressive how much more you get from any customer service hotline if you ask the person you get on the phone, how are you doing today? Because you're incredibly likely the only person in weeks to ask them and to show them that you actually care. And they're most likely going to do something for you. Some will not, but overall, you get a lot more of your claims resolved so much faster just by checking in. And it's something that I do every time I need to call a customer service, and my rate of resolution is actually pretty good. Yep, and apparently I'm backed up with someone who's actually a professional, who's actually a professional in that area. So definitely, and basically, people behave the way you treat them. If you're like, oh, anyway, we cannot ask anything about judges or to judges because they always fuck it up. Oh yeah, like I mean, basically they're going to fuck it up, or rather they're not going to do much so that like they cannot fuck up anything. And this is actually a real life conversation that I've heard. And also, when you start thinking that someone is bad, you start setting yourself up to always feeling that this person is bad. And at some point, it becomes confirmation bias. Your brain is going to ignore everything that this person is doing great, only to focus on what this person is doing badly. And therefore, no matter what that person would do, it would still be incredibly bad. As someone who has done a selection for Pro Tours, I can tell you that in the feedback I was getting from GPA judges about applicants, I was seeing old stories from like 6 years ago, and all of those stories were always negative. Nobody ever gave me feedback which was positive from 6 years ago. And those people, like they interacted with one judge once, and it was bad, and it stayed there. And in their mind, every time they would see that judge sucked, no matter how much that judge worked hard to improve. They were it's like, oh yeah, that guy sucks. We all know. Well, I'm glad that you make a statement that we all know. That I didn't know you were omniscient, uh, but that's how it is, and that is also incredibly poor when you're trying to create some virtuous cycles. So we are reaching. Well, we're reaching the end of the theory, and afterwards I've got the practice, and I'm pretty sure that I've got 3 minutes left, so it's going to be rough. 2 minutes, awesome. So, small reminder, real quick, on the basis of agile management. I'll pass. I will share my slides just afterwards. Don't worry. So, my guide to team leading, part one. Prep is mandatory and not the evening before. Um, a formula that I read in that book that I quoted, Management 3.0, competence is discipline times skills, which means that someone who's incredibly skilled but not disciplined uh, is not incredibly useful. The exact same way that someone who is incredibly disciplined but not skilled is useful. Um, Basically, if you want to do some math, 5 times 5 is 25, and 1 times 9 is 9. However, 5 plus 5 is 10, and 1 plus 9 is 10 as well. So really, that's a key thing. You need to show people, you need to work with people who are skilled, but also who have some discipline. And you're the first one who should show that. And that's why definitely prep is mandatory. Even if you're incredibly skilled, you still need to be disciplined, because that is also making your teammates' life better. So send an email with what the day is going to be about, because everybody who's going to read it once will remember some. But you still cannot expect that the email is enough. In your morning briefing, ask someone who volunteers for it to recap the team tasks. That's an opportunity for someone to step up, which is motivating. Someone who did not prepare for whichever reason, you don't care, is going to catch up, but they will not be called out. And even when you notice that someone came totally unprepared, do not call them out publicly by saying that was in the email. This is incredibly poor. This is just humiliating them. So be benevolent. Just find ways. I mean, if someone is unprepared, you will notice, but calling them out, it doesn't really achieve much. Think about it. Praise publicly, criticize privately. While this is happening, you learn about your teammates. You learn about who's an introvert. You learn about who's an extrovert. Like, people volunteering generally are extrovert, or introverts very much in their comfort zones. You will also see who's motivated and who's not so motivated. Motivated people will often say, hey, wait, I don't think that's entirely true. Like, they will step up, etc. And when this is happening, you also improve, because you realize what was not clear enough in your email, so you can self-improve. And you are able to correct mistakes in the summaries that you get given, and you can also explain your reasoning so that you're ensure that people understand. Acknowledge your limits. If you acknowledge your limits in the morning, this is developing mutual trust, because you are telling people, I need you to have my back because I'm not crazy experienced, I don't feel crazy well, or whatever. There is this sentence which I hear more and more, which is fake it until you make it. It has limits, especially when you're a manager. You cannot fake it when you're the one responsible. Like, people are going to notice that you have no clue what you're doing. In some cases, you might look overconfident, yet have no clue, and people may possibly follow you. That may work. And when they're going to fuck up because they trusted you, they'll be like, okay, so now I feel bad, and it's not really my fault, but I still feel bad. So this is highly demotivating. Welcome support, which is enhancing team spirit. We are all in this together. And this is something that that you should tell your team, that you're all here to make this work. And people are generally happy to help. I mean, if you try to fake it until you make it, nobody is going to tell you, you sure about this one? Because blah, which is like a polite signal that you might want to reconsider. Or something that someone that has happened to me quite sometimes. Someone can say, "Hey, would you like me by any chance to handle that stuff I had totally forgotten about?" And honestly, it was super nice of them because I had totally forgotten. It was critical. Uh, and but basically, yeah, I had acknowledged in the morning that I was not that I was not outstanding at this specific position, and that person was like, "Yeah, I mean, he's willing to acknowledge his limits. I'm willing to help." And sometimes it happens that you really had it in mind, but you wanted to do it afterwards. And your instinctive reaction is to say, yeah, I had it in mind. And honestly, even if it's true, it's it's actually very dismissive. So refrain from mentioning it. You take it, you say, hey, yeah, thanks. Great idea. Because that is highly motivating. As a manager, if you want to be a leader, you're not here to defend yourself. You're here to make others improve. And I know that what I write here, I've not done it many times in my life because I am who I am. But really, this is something that I have been working infinitely on. Still failing many times, but I'm really working on it. Rationally speaking, this is exactly what you should do. There are 4 parts, by the way. So during the day, create fast feedback loops. Uh, Try to gather your team once per round for what is called a 360 meeting. So it's usually, okay, how have you been doing, everybody? Anything that we need to improve? Anything you struggled with? Should be should be fast, but should give but it should give people a chance to speak up. Say thank you even for what is only normal. Um, Taking things for granted is not motivating the team. Like if you're like, well, this is a core basis because of what you should do because you're paid for. I mean, what's the point? Yes, I'm gonna do my best to wrap this up. Um, People like being thanked, so it's really a feel good effect that would motivate them because they realize that you're grateful to them. Recognize people efforts. Global suggestions should be recognized more than one shot actions. And if you give credit, give it publicly. Because otherwise, you might end up with a pyromaniac fireman syndrome. Someone is going to let things slip intentionally to intervene just in time to save the day. And if this is worth recognition, this is incredibly toxic because it incentivizes everybody to just do the same, which means that you've got lower quality and more recognition for saving the low quality event. So you should always wonder if the person who saved the day also created the issue. And finally, make people speak. Avoid lecture debriefing. Make people feel that they contributed until the very end. My pro tip is usually one good thing, one bad thing. Let's start with the good thing, one each. And usually, I start first. Um, some people will not be comfortable, and saying no should be okay. You shouldn't force them. You can try to ask a second time if they could make their mind, but otherwise, I mean, make them comfortable. And um, and finally, people don't need to have shined to be told something positive about, because simply doing the job is already a strength, and that is called being reliable. When I debriefed the team in OKC, there was one judge I could not I could not say anything crazy positive about until I actually realized that this judge, at some point, had just been doing a great job all day long. They never did anything exceptional, but every time someone needed to do something, that job was there. And honestly, this was positive, even if it was just doing the job. Thanks a lot for listening to me. I apologize that this was a little bit over time. Apparently, the next seminar is starting in 2 minutes, so I'm not completely late yet. I'm sorry to. I apologize to the next presenter. This was a little bit long. First time I was presenting. And at least now I know what I could cut and I know what I should change. Thank you for attending, and as usual, if you want to read some more of my life, you can go on my blog. It's a bunch of stories with some reasoning behind. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the day. And for me, that will be a night.